So sorry. This will make you dizzy, huh? Okay, I'm gonna be really still. Okay. Um, about lights. Good one, David. Yep. Okay, so he's on his way. He'll be here any minute. And I forgot what's this our new system that we're trying to work out. I know there's like a countdown or something. So I was trying to figure out how to make it fun at the beginning, and it didn't work out. So thanks for being here. Today we're going to talk about, I think I heard him just drive up. Yep. So today we're going to talk about draftsperson and an architect, because we get a lot of questions about that. Should I use a draftsperson or an architect? And here he is. He's just walking in the door. So I'm going to turn it over to him.
Okay.
Let me.
I'm an actual working YouTuber. I don't live on YouTube. I actually work as a general contractor. So I just got off a job. We came from the dump, and it was a smelly dump today, taking off a bunch of stuff. Going to give some posts on it. So
there's some smears on your camera.
There's some smears on my camera. Oh, there we go.
Oh, no, that made it worse.
I wanted to talk about something real quickly, the difference between draftsperson and an architect. I get a lot of people asking me that question. And I want to give some feedback on that, and then I'll start taking some questions from people tonight. And obviously, you've known, if you follow me at all, you know that I don't recommend buying plans online and downloading those plans, because you're going to have a headache. It's not going to be what you want. It's not going to fit local code. You're not going to have the plot plan all done. You're going to have a headache. So you're still left with choosing a draftsperson or an architect. And I want to give you some feedback on that. That's my dog, my Wisla. She's a red desert dog. I wanted to give some feedback on the difference between the two and whether or not you should choose an architect or a draftsperson. Now, an architect, a true full-on architect, is certification, licensure. It's a person who may have gone through some training to get certified to be an architect. Anyone who calls themselves an architect is of that type of caliber. Now, that means that an architect can tend to charge more for your plans than a draftsperson. Now, I have 2 or 3 people in my on my bench in my company, not my company, but in my community that I hire all the time, and they're both drafts people, but they're better than an architect. Now, why do I say that? Both of them will actually go to the job site and look at the lay of the land. If it's a remodel, they will look at the house. My dog's crazy right now. They will go to the house and measure, and they'll get a feel for everything. That is a great draftsperson or architect. If they don't do that, they're really not worth their weight in salt. I am doing a remodel, and the person that did the new design never walked in the house. I got to do a video on this, where I don't know if you've seen the old plumbing systems with a big, huge manifold. Well, the architect decided to put a wall right where that manifold is. So I'm kind of stuck with that. I'm stuck with a lot of other stuff where they don't think about the impact of their design, because they never go to the house to look at things to assess whether or not that should be done. For example, I had a shower. I'm talking about remodels, and they wanted to enlarge the shower. And when we cut it open and broke it open, right behind the shower was a huge return air for HVAC system. So that had to change. I'm actually redesigning everything. We're redesigning everything to accommodate the needs of the client, make things work out nice for them. So architects and draftspeople, if they never go to the site, either a remodel or even looking at the lay of the land, I've seen them make some really, really bad decisions. And it's not a matter of who's better, architect or a draftsperson. It's a matter of how much work they're willing to actually put into it. Now, the costs can be $150 $1.25. I've seen them as low as $1 a square foot. I've seen them as high as 10% of the total cost to build. These are architects that charge a huge fee, but they're a huge bang for your buck. They include all of your engineering, site programming, site analysis, in-depth study of you, in-depth study of the designs. You're paying for what you get. Now, when you just get a regular draftsperson or a regular architect, if they don't do any kind of programming or any kind of site analysis or any interior assessment of what you're trying to remodel, they're just trying to go off of what plans you may have given them or what plans you have left over from the home, then they're making guesswork. And so you just don't want to get somebody who does guesswork. I had some plans from a house that I built just up north here, and the architect was in Oregon. And when we were building, I said, did not the architect do any topographical analysis? Topographical tells you, every single line tells you the height elevation changes of the topography of the land. And typically from one line to another line is a whole foot. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more, but for the most part, it's about a foot change. So when you see strata lines on a parcel, it shows you that that's the change in elevation. Well, I had to literally drop the house 14 feet and bring it forward to the street another 25 feet. And that encroached on the neighbor's parcel. Then I had to buy the neighbor's parcel, and that cost me $14,000. One thing led to another. And these are people who never really study things out. They don't look at what's really going on the land. And it's hard. I know if you're designing a home and you're in Oregon and you're designing for a home in Utah, you're going to make mistakes. You're not going to really know the situation. So if you're going to get anybody, make sure you get somebody as local as you possibly can, who can possibly meet you on the job site, see the elevation changes, see all that. That's worth its weight in gold. And I don't care if it's an architect or a draftsperson. You want somebody who really wants to see how the home is going to sit or how the actual remodel is situated, so that they know what's behind walls and they don't make assumptions about things. So ask around how much they're going to care, how much they're going to take the time to at least know those basic situations. And you can find those people. They're both architects and they're both draftspeople. You can find them, and they have that care and they have that consideration. So look around. You're not going to be better off by getting an architect. That's not going to be the case. I've seen some draftsmen do some incredible work, and they have the other thing you want to look for is a three-dimensional perspective, meaning that they can see in 3 dimensions. Like a great acrobat or a gymnast, they have a kinetic sense of where their body is in relation to the earth every second of the rotation while they're in air. Well, an architect or a draftsperson, if they have a 3-dimensional perspective, they can see how things are in their mind's eye. That actually makes them a better person in their skill set. But if they don't, and they're strictly 1-dimensional, they can't see it until they see it. I've seen some designers that made me move it here. I want to see. Can we do it there? I want to see. Can we move the light up here? Can we move it down up? And they just can't see it in their mind's eye, and they can be the worst. And if you've got an architect or a draftsperson who's that way and they can't see it until they see it, you got a problem. So I wanted to give some feedback on that because I'm going through a real headache right now with a job, and I wish that I was able to choose the designer or be a part of the process so we could have caught some things. So think about that. This is Keith, me giving you my little rant for the morning, so for the evening. Let's take some questions here. David is, how do you find a draftsperson? That's a good question. Don't look under architect. You're not going to find them because they can't legally call themselves an architect unless they're actually licensed with their state. So what you might want to do is, like, for example, 2 blocks from you, there's a draft room, and there's 2 draftsmen in there that are constantly drafting home plans. So look for draftsperson. You can also go to engineers in town, structural engineers, and ask them, who do you recommend for a draftsperson? And sometimes they'll have a draftsperson in-house. Like I've got my engineer who just hired a draftsperson that I recommended to him and he hired him. He's now in-house, so he has his own draftsperson. So ask engineers, local structural engineers, ask framing companies, hey, who's the best draftsperson that you've worked with on homes? They'll tell you. Framers will tell you a lot. Also ask lumber supply houses. You can even call an architect in town. I'm just looking for a draftsperson. Do you recommend anybody, or do you have anybody on staff that's just willing to do a draft of a home? I have it all planned out. And the more you think about it and plan it out, the better off. They don't have to make guesses and stuff like that. So just network, ask around. That's the best way I can answer that question.
Oh, sorry. I was having fun with everybody.
Oh, you were having fun with everybody?
Yeah, I was telling
Okay.
them that you're stinky.
I'm stinky. I just came home from the dump. My wife says I stink. Okay, what's the next one?
Well, let's see what I didn't read this one.
Oh, Giselman. Giselman. That's an interesting name. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I'm penciling out a home using Omniblock with a slab floor. Do you suggest the mechanical room touch an exterior interior wall, or is it okay that a mechanical room such that it only has interior walls? That's a really good question. If you need some ventilation and you want to go through the roof, or if you want to come through the exterior wall with any ventilation, if you need any intake air because it's gas, then you may want that you're going to go through the roof anyway. So it doesn't really matter. It might be advantageous to put that in the center of the home. As long as it's in the center of the home, then you're going to eliminate some of your trunk line issues, and you're going to make the HVAC system a little more efficient. So I've done that. If you look on my videos, I did a home I completed about 9 months ago or so, where we did an HVAC system that had access from the outside, but it was basically inside the envelope of the home, even though it was accessed from outside. So you might want to think about that. It was also fully enclosed, meaning there was a porch that was over it, so you couldn't, no weathering can get to it. And if you do a mechanical room, try to put and if it's on the slab on grade, put your water softener in there, your water heater in there, your heating and air conditioning system in there, put it all in there. Make it efficient, make it great, and put a drain on that floor. And by doing that, if you ever have a problem, it's going to be confined to that room. So next question is here. How do you know when to fire or stop working for an architect?
Firing or stop working.
Here's the problem.
They didn't walk on the floor.
Here's the problem. Sometimes they'll get you with the price and it might be cheap, but they're not going to follow through with the plot plan. They're not going to follow through with the city requirements. And if the city requires certain things on a plan, elevation issues, selections, materials, all kinds of stuff. And if they don't want to follow through with that, then they're going to be a pain. You want to withhold some money from them. If you've withheld some money, that's going to keep them on the leash. But if you've paid them a lot or the whole thing up front, they're not willing to follow through with stuff, then you've got a problem. So you don't want to give them everything all at once. Now, I had an architect that I hooked a client up with, and this client charged $10,000, and that included everything. It was kind of a headache for the architect. She doesn't want to take any more, but it was a California build in a city that had a lot of, rigmarole. And so the plot plan, the elevations, all that was really a headache. They went through the city multiple times. Now, a lot of architects do not like to design in highly political cities because they know they're going to deal with possibly inspectors that are not going to let up. You need to do this. You need to do that. You need to have. Whereas in some counties, in some jurisdictions, you don't even need structural plans. You just need some drafted plans. That's it. No structural plans. So it really depends on the city, jurisdiction, the permitting office that you are trying to build a home in. If it's highly sophisticated, very Nazi-like, I guess that's the best way to put it, very particular about a lot of work, then you're going to want an architect or draftsperson who's going to go the distance on that and make sure that on the agreement you do design plans per requirement with local building codes and local building office. If you just say, I want plans designed, but they're not going to include all the things that the local building office can ask for, you can have a problem. You're probably running into a problem because of that. So, okay, next question. Bradley, I have 20 plus years excavating experience. I'm planning on getting my sand mound septic installer license. Oh, that's cool. So I can install my septic myself. Do you think this is a good idea? Yeah. If you're an excavator and you are, if this is for your own home, I'm getting my sand mound septic installer license so I can install my septic myself. But for sure, if you're an excavator, you already know the dirt work. Do it yourself. Get that certification. Get so you can do it yourself. You can actually do it yourself anyway. I don't know what state you were in, but as an owner builder, typically you can do everything yourself. You just can't sell your home within 2 years. That's pretty much the standard I've noticed across the country. You can do that yourself anyway, but it'd be nice to be certified in that. That way you can add that to your repertoire, your ability as an excavator. So good idea. David B., or get a drone land survey. Yeah, that's true. Those are pretty cool. If they have a good architectural program like Revit or Chief Architect, they can import the 3D file of your land. Yes, when I started doing land development a long time ago, before they had topographical surveys and satellites, we had to pay for a flyover survey, and it was $15,000. And it was a full topographical survey. And it added a lot of contours to the land so that we could better design something for that parcel. So yeah, now you can do it with a drone. So yeah, good comment. Harold Douglas, a suggestion for a future discussion, liens and especially who to get lien waivers from. Yeah, I'm going to put that on for next week because I could go into a 30-minute rant and a few long discussion on that. So I'll have my wife put me down and we'll talk about that first thing next Thursday. It's a good comment there. Good suggestion.
Okay, this is a multiple one. Okay.
Okay, Zach asks the question. Apologies in advance, trying to ask my question again because I explained it poorly last week. 4-part question. Okay, I have a full basement, 8 foot deep in a high water table in Northwest Washington. Have an idea to dig 8 feet down around the entire basement, exposing the concrete walls on the outside, pouring an 8 foot tall retaining wall 3 feet off the existing basement walls. Would be left with an 8 foot high by 3 foot wide corridor around the exterior of the basement walls with concrete on all sides. Okay. Would be concrete sidewalk to top bridge over basement walls and retaining wall. This 8 by 3 cavity would act as a French drain that could not fail over time because there would be no dirt. Yeah. Now a high water table would rest against retaining walls instead of basement walls. And since they are no longer touching the wet soil, the concrete could air dry. Okay. So it's basically a wet wall. It's almost like that. The challenge you're going to have is that you want some bracing between wall to wall on the top, because when you put water or dirt up against that wall, you're going to put a lot of static pressure against the new wall on the outer area. And it's got to be engineered to handle that. And most basements, when they're installed, they get a lot of frame structure inside it that locks that in and helps a little bit of that wall. Plus, there's a massive amount of rebar in there to help with that. So you don't want that wall to lean into the existing home. So you're going to have it engineered. Anytime you do a wall, whether it's a retaining wall or any kind of foundation wall that is over 3 feet, this is pretty much a standard. Anytime it's over 3 feet, you have to have it engineered. And when you have to have it engineered, you have to have it permitted with the local permitting office at the same time, especially with very sophisticated areas. So double check with your engineer and double check with others. You can put some gravel in there between those 2 walls. That would also help with the French drain as well. But check with the engineering on that when it gets to be over 3 feet.
Oh, that's everything. He gave us a super chat. Thanks, Zach.
Oh, thanks, Zach. Appreciate that. Sorry for the long question. Planning to join your courses soon. Great. Welcome aboard.
Okay, so here's
It's Bjorn.
Is it
Bjorn.
Swedish or Norwegian?
British or Norwegian?
Swedish.
Oh, Swedish.
Visual.
Okay. Finding a draftsperson or architect that is familiar with ICF has been a challenge. Yes. Talk with an engineer first. Go talk with an engineer and say, "Who I want to do this. I want to do an ICF build. Who do you recommend?" Also, talk with ICF manufacturers and ask them if they have an in-house engineer and if they can actually do the drafts work for you. Now, when I do OmniBlock, Denny does an outline of all of my OmniBlock out of Vegas. So I have my draftsperson's work and I have Denny's block layout at the same time. So a lot of these companies will do a block layout. Now, if the architect knows where those blocks need to end up, so there's no cutting of them, then they can design the home accordingly. And I do that with my OmniBlock homes. So just talk to the manufacturers, see where they would recommend. They most likely may be able to engineer it. If they can't engineer it, they'll give a reference for somebody in your state for engineering that home. Okay, Stephen Facro, wouldn't you suggest getting a boundary topographic and utility survey prior to the home design? It depends. If you're in a very, very rural area and you're building on 5 acres, why? But if you're building in an area in the city and it's on 10,000 square feet and you're very confined, you might want to know where everything is. But you can get some grid paper and you can make one grid be 20 feet, 10 feet, a foot, whatever you want. And then you can actually figure and line this out yourself. And once you've established that, even with contour lines, Google Earth will help you with contour lines. I mean, you don't have to go to the expense on that. In fact, I'm actually putting a home in up north, and I'm not having a surveyor mark the corners because I found enough corners. I'm pulling off 25 feet from the side setback. I have plenty of room on the lot. I'm cheating 2 feet in further so that I know that I'm more than safe because I have such a huge lot that I know that I'm going to be safe on the placement of that home. So try to avoid costs when you really don't need them, unless you're building a $6 million home and you want to have everything nice and you have the money to do it. But if not, if you can save it, try to save it. Next question, JCTR4. What is the average excavation cost? Very good question. It depends on how deep you have to over-ex the home. Now, what does over-excavation means? I'm doing a job right now, which is why I'm late. I got dirt in my hair. I'm having to dig down 5 feet, pile the dirt elsewhere on the job site, and then I have to recompact it, and I have to have a test every foot by the geotech engineer to make sure I've got a 95% compaction. So excavation changes and the costs are determined by the geotech report. And if that report tells you you've got collapsible soil, or tells you that you've got expandable soils, or tells you what you need to do to ameliorate the soil to get it ready for building, then that's going to tell you what the cost is for excavation. So the average for a fully developed lot that's ready to go, it's just footings and ready to go to build on. But if it's undeveloped, meaning it hasn't been improved, the soils have not been compacted and prepped and ready to go, then I've seen excavation in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've done jobs that are around $80,000. I've done jobs that are north of $100,000. So that's why the home site selection checklist is so important, because there are items on that checklist that tell you to watch out for and what to look for, because if you don't watch out for these things, it can be very costly. Here's a good point. I built a home, a very custom high-end home on rock. I mean, literally on rock. And we had to chisel down the drive 6 feet wide, 3 feet down for all the utilities. I had the gas on one side, power on one side, water and sewer and low voltage, all in that 6-foot trench. And that was not fun to dig out. But you have to look at these things. People look at lots and they're pretty, but they don't realize that there's no utilities to the build site. There's utility to the lip of curb, but the utilities haven't been brought into the build area. And that can be a huge cost. So you want to watch out for that. Check the home site selection checklist out. It's at howtobuildyourOwnHome.com. It's at the very top. Just check it out. You can get it for free, and that gives you an example of the checklists that I create. So Clough Green 11, that's a cool name. I'm going to build an OmniBlock home. Boy, Denny's going to be happy about that. I need to get a referral fee from Denny. I've been selling a lot of OmniBlock homes. Excuse me. When hiring masons, plumbers, electricians, other subs, is it necessary to hire someone who has already had experience with OmniBlock? If you can, yes. The mason needs to be a structural mason, meaning they know how to build a bond beam. Over your windows, you're going to have either a lintel or a bond beam. And typically, if your window header is 2 or 3 feet above the window, they can accommodate a bond beam, which is inside the OmniBlock, which means rebar above the window, and then they pour it in with concrete. That becomes your bond beam. That becomes your header, your header support for resting heavy-weighted trusses on top of that wall. But if they don't know how to build a bond beam, then they may go with a lintel. A lintel is a piece of metal. It's an L bracket metal that they will insert on the top of that door or the top of that window, and that there becomes basically your header support. It depends on what they're comfortable with. Your mason is the most important. Your electrical, that's a different box. It's all in metal tubing. It's all going to be in either gray PVC or metal tubing. It's going to be inside the wall, and there's a particular type of box that they will cut out, and it's not hard to cut that out with a grinder. They cut it out and they insert it all in there. And it's going to take your electrician just a little more thought to make sure that if he wants power in a certain location, let me explain. Let's say you want power on that wall over there. Okay. I've got a wall over here underneath those pictures. This wall is an OmniBlock wall. Well, I have power coming up through the floor, under the floor, and then it comes up over and inside that wall over there, and I have a panel in that wall. So I was able to think in advance that how am I going to get power to that box over there? Well, we have conduit going underneath the floor into that panel and up into that box. It was much easier than coming all the way through the truss and down through the block. We just found that it was easy for that location. Same for the kitchen. There's a couple of spots where we actually come up through the wall and into the block. So if your electrician is okay to work with the masons, they can actually work together on that, especially the plugs and outlets. Once the mason gets to, I think, the second row of block, then your electrician will come in and put all the outlets in that block and run his conduit up high, and then they can continue going. But they just need to come to the job site a couple of times with the mason to work with the mason. So next question. Oh, last comment on that. The plumbers need to work there too. They need to, when the plumbers do the underground on the OmniBlock, I've got a couple of videos on my YouTube channel. They need to do a setback because they're not doing a 2x6 wall. They're doing an 8-inch wall. So that toilet and all the plumbing has to be set back away from the wall. They need to be communicated of that. They need to know the exact placement of where that wall is going to be. So just tell them what an OmniBlock is and actually have an OmniBlock with you. Say, this is the exterior wall. This is where it's going to go. Make sure you pull your measurements from that point. Okay, I just started watching, but this is exactly a question I need answered. I bought a home plan online, but I want to make changes. Yeah, you get a draftsperson, and when you do buy it online, make sure you get the vector file. If you don't get the vector file, the actual CAD file, then it's going to be hard to make changes. So David B, hit the thumbs up if you like the screen. Yes, that would be awesome. WD, draftsmen may miss some important things. We hired one, then the county made us get engineered to sign off because some of the software were over 2 feet and prescribed methods couldn't be used. That's true, especially if you're in a snowy area. I'm willing to bet you're in a snowy area and it couldn't accommodate the load. Jeff Abbott, the draftsman that drew our plans is also a highly sought after builder here, and he's building ours. Okay. A lot of builders just get tired of dealing with stuff, and so they actually learn to do it themselves. So I've never taken the time to do that because I spend my time writing books rather than drafting work. Building now means costly construction loans and a weak market, but with cheaper labor and materials. Waiting may offer cheaper loans and stronger market, but at a higher material and labor cost. Very true. That's a quid pro quo. And I just talked with my concrete guy. I go, how far out do you go? And I got a pool deck and I got a porch, but I don't have anything else. And I go, great. I'm not going to have to mess with his schedule. He's lined out. So a lot of laborers is going to be hungry, especially in this next year. Wally, what's your advice on choosing the better option? Better option.
It was to the last question.
Oh, what was the last?
Together.
Oh,
The market.
oh,
Let me go back.
okay.
Read it again. So building costs and construction and loans for the weak market, cheaper labor and materials.
Okay.
Or waiting
So
for
basically,
loans and a strong market, but higher
I'm going to
rates.
do a market update, and I actually film that tomorrow morning. I've actually got a lot of research. I can't go into it right now, but I'm going to give some of my best feedback on what's going to be happening next year. But I think we're going to be facing more deflationary costs in real estate, while we're going to have some inflation in other areas. We may find some flatlining of material costs. Right now, a lot of the box stores are not that busy, so their prices are not going up. So material costs are not going to go up. Actual land and real estate may go down. I think it's going to go down considerably. Labor is going to go down. The only thing that's the caveat is the interest rate. So if the interest rate is going to go up even higher than what it is now, and there's some that actually think that that's going to be the case, that just puts a lot of mud in the water. But you want to watch that interest rate. Don't listen to the Fed. Just look what the Fed does. And when they say they're going to hold out for longer, they mean that. That's what they're going to do. Then they're going to keep the interest rate higher longer. They may not go higher from here, but they're going to keep it where it's at. So if you can build with that interest rate, then great. And if you can manage the loan on it, the more you can cash flow, the better. Wally, building now means, okay, are there? Bradley James, I am planning to do an unvented attic with a fresh air system installed. My area calls for R49 insulation in the attic. You must be in a very cold environment. Would you suggest doing R49 closed cell foam on the roof deck of the attic? No, I would not recommend doing that. I've mentioned this a couple of times. I'm not a fan of closed cell underneath the roof deck of the roof, because if you have a leak in that roof, there's nowhere for that water to go. It's going to puddle behind that closed cell, and then it's going to rot your roof. You want your insulation closer to the envelope of the home, not under the deck of the roof. And so you want your insulation fluffy right above the ceiling here is where you want your insulation. Now, I know a lot of people like the closed cell. It might help with utility costs. It actually helps with some structural integrity of the home. But I don't like an impermeable surface, meaning that it's not porous. Closed cell means no water, no air, nothing is going to get through that. So if you have a piece of sheeting here and you've got 2 or 3 inches of closed cell insulation there, then even if there's a leak or moisture underneath there, it can't get through that. It can't get through anything. So I'm not a fan of it. So I've given closed cell foam, spray foam, so much thought, and I've finally come to the conclusion. That's my conclusion.
This won't be a living space, only a full truss system, no attic trusses.
No attic truss, only a full.
I'm not saying a question.
Okay. Yeah, I still wouldn't do the spray foam under the deck of the roof. I would just do a nice 24 inches to 30 inches of nice fluffy stuff right above your attic. And I wouldn't go close to the roof on that. As far as it not venting, that could be the fact that you're probably building in California or some other state that doesn't allow for venting under the eaves. And I know a lot of states are clamping down on that because it's a fire hazard. So if that's the case, then you're going to build up some heat in that attic. You're going to have a lot of fluffy stuff, a lot of insulation in there to accommodate for that. And it's going to build up heat in there. I'm in the desert, so I do a lot of ventilation because my attics can get up to 145 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's hot. And so that eventually works its way down into the home. So I do some venting only to eliminate some of that excess heat. So I get it down to 120, 115 or whatever. So I can eliminate some of that heat. So Ontology Dragon, it's a cool name. Building a foot home in rainy Western Washington, 2-foot crawl space. Should we use vapor barrier around the concrete in the crawl space area? Depends on your water table. If you've got a water table issue there, then you might want to do that. I also like to put a lot of gravel in there, pea gravel, a couple of inches of that, so that it has a lot of aeration around the gravel. So imagine some water or moisture could come up, but if there's a lot of gravel in there, there's all that surface area around the gravel so it can air off. I'm not really a fan of fully enclosed crawl spaces. I'm more, and you've listened to me on my rant on this a lot of times, I'm more a fan of venting and making sure there's a lot of air movement through there. Now, if you're in a super, super cold environment, but you have humid summers, that could be a problem. But I know the cold environments mean that you now have to insulate that deck. You have to insulate the floor underneath that. Now, I took some pictures. I should have taken some pictures of it. I did a floor up in the mountains. It's 6,700 feet elevation, and we did 3 inches of semi-rigid rock wool underneath that deck, and we put slats underneath the floor to hold it underneath there. And that's mold-proof, rot-proof, fireproof. That's the best insulation out there in the market. So I would put that in your crawl space right underneath your floor, and I'd ventilate the rest. But I don't know what your water table is going to be or any moisture issues. And if you're Western Washington, you're probably in a drier climate. The further you get to the coast, it's going to be more moisture. So that's something to think about. How far away are you from the ocean? Western Washington is probably quite a ways away. Building a house with stucco exterior. Does the framer do the house wrap or the stucco guy? The stucco guy does your house wrap. The framer will do the house wrap around the windows. And then your stucco crew will come in and put their Tyvek, and they'll put it underneath from bottom up. They'll put it underneath his paper wrap that is around the windows. So let's just double check that. You will have what's called a lath inspection, more than likely in your area, and they will come and inspect all the paper and all the wire mesh and all that before they're allowed to put the gray coat on. And everything passes, you're good to go. So question, cloth green 11. Actually, Denny directed me to you and not the other way around. That's interesting. We're sending each other some work here. Retired person. Hello, Keith. Thank you. Chase DePrize. Hi, will the toilets be a rear outlet or floor outlet with OmniBlock? It's going to be a floor. You can't mount that to the OmniBlock. It's not going to have the strength to withhold that toilet. Now, you might be able to find a bracket system that you can put inside the OmniBlock wall, but that's going to be scary for the plumber, and he's not going to know how to do that. So you're going to actually have a floor mount system for that toilet. So next question.
This is a 3-part.
Okay, Boss DeMaster. That's a cool name. Trying to put together excavation budget, heavy clay soil in upstate New York. Architect says go down to no clay or organic matter or increase footer size. I could dig to China. Who makes that decision? Do I have to hire an engineer too? Go back to that first question because he mentioned something about organic matter. Trying to put excavation budget, heavy clay soil in upstate. Architect says go down to no clay or no organic matter. That should say no organic matter or increase footer size. How far down do you have to go until you hit clay, or do you not hit clay? I'm interested on that. You're going to have to talk with your engineer on that one. I can't answer that one. You will get a compaction test and have them do a compaction on it and make sure you pass with the percentage that they want you to compact with. But the footer size may not mean anything if you don't have the depth of the footing. I've seen people do really broad footings and they're only 6 inches deep. So you may want to look to see if it should be 8 or 12 or 14 inches deep and then maybe 24 inches wide. I don't know. But your geologist, your geotech report is given to your engineer, and then your engineer will tell you how big your footings need to be. So you need to follow your structural plans. Okay, Wally, can an owner builder somehow include the cost of purchasing a tractor excavator in a construction loan for self-handled excavations like foundations, pools, and trenches? Please say yes. The answer is yes if, here's the caveat. I purchased some heavy equipment because I have a job of my own that I found that the excavation costs were north of $90,000. I had 2 bids, one that came in at $105,000, one that came in at $90,000. I said to myself, I'm buying the Traco. And I bought the Traco for $64,000. Now, which one sounds better to you? At the end of it, you have a Traco. Now you have a little way to make money around the neighborhood doing a little Traco work. And so you have to look at the real cost of excavation. If you get some bids, 2, maybe 3 bids of the excavation for your home, all the lot preparation, trenching, utility lines, any other grubbing, any other stub, tree removal, whatever it may, add all that up. If that's over the cost of an actual purchase of a piece of machinery that will do all that work for you, then you're at an advantage. Now you're just trading your own labor time, your own time on the machine to get it done. But when you're done, you've got an asset. Now here's where it gets interesting. You create an LLC and you buy that asset with the LLC, although when it comes time to invoice out the excavation costs, you send an invoice from the LLC to the bank. And then that LLC gets to write off the purchase of that material. I'm getting into a lot of finance here. Not a tax person, but you see what I'm talking about. Start to talk to a tax person, you'll see the advantage of it. So I'm a builder, and when you do well and I have a lot of jobs, guess what? In order to avoid taxes, what do? What do most people do? They buy assets, heavy equipment. They buy tools. They buy all these things that makes their job easier, but it also creates more opportunity to make money in different areas as a builder. And I went excavation. Excavation's where the big money is. I used to think roofing was cool, and then I was stupid. I was getting on a roof and falling off roofs and injuring myself, and now I do dirt work. So it's a good idea. Retired person. Your title mentions using just a draftsperson of hiring an architect. At what point is an engineer needed to be sought in a new custom home? When the drafting or the design of the home is complete. When it's all complete and you don't have any more red lines and you're satisfied with the layout, the footprint, all that, then that whole file is sent to the structural engineer and then they go to town. So, next question. Miriam E. When building a duplex, is a double wall necessary to prevent noise transfer? No, but it is required for fire. There'll be a double wall, and typically you'll have fire rated, I think it's a 1/2 inch or more of drywall, and that drywall is going to be put on both sides of the wall, and that's called a fire rated wall. That will also help with noise reduction. However, it didn't help with a twin home my wife and I had years and years ago. Even though it was a fire rated wall, all they did was they put a stud in the middle here, and they put drywall on it, and then they on both sides of it, and then they put the framework right up to it. But that wall was pretty much hollow, and they didn't have any insulation in it. So it was a fire rated wall, but there was no insulation in it. So make sure you put some SoundTech in there. SoundTech is a great Rockwell product, and it specializes in reducing the noise transfer of from wall to wall. So make sure it's a fire rated and insulated with SoundTech. Wally, for windows you recommend buying locally. Do you advise sourcing any construction materials or services non-locally? What are the drawbacks of importing a framing package from another country? I wouldn't import a framing package from another country. The number one reason is because you're transporting wood from one location to another location, and it could be high humidity, low humidity, transferring it to another location that could actually be just the opposite. And when it gets to your job site, you could have a nightmare. You want wood to be acclimated to the area in which you're building. Same thing with flooring. If you actually have a natural wood floor that you're putting installed, what does the manufacturer tell you? Make sure you open the boxes and you set the temperature in the home and you get it acclimated, and it needs to be acclimated for 48 hours. Well, you can't acclimate wood. It's going to be in the natural environment. It's going to be what it is. As far as buying locally, if you find a nice glazing company that actually makes some good windows, check them out. But you're going to find windows are all over the country. They're manufactured everywhere. It's very rare that you buy windows outside the country. You buy them inside the country because the transport costs are just too high, and the manufacturing is much easier to do it here. So you look around. I can't tell you which window manufacturer to buy. There's a ton of them. They're all over the place. You just want to make sure that they follow a low E standard, and you want to make sure that there's no heat transfer from the outside to the inside, that there's a thermal bridge in the window, meaning that you can't fill the outside air on the frame only, on the outside air coming inside the inside. You don't fill that. It's not going to have transfer. Glass is a different story. You're going to have the argon gas between the two panes. That helps a little bit. But if I had my druthers and I had a lot of money, I would be building triple pane windows. And those I typically buy out of the country. Those are manufactured in Sweden. There's a great company in Sweden. There's also a company in China that I'm familiar with. But those are the only companies I'd buy out of the state, out of the country, if there's triple pane. So.
Back to this.
Thank you. So no floating toilets or cabinets on OmniBlock. The OmniBlock, you can do floating cabinets. I've got floating cabinets in my kitchen. They can do that. But you can't do a floating toilet. It's too much weight. Unless they have an armature or an actual metal bracket system that has to actually be poured with the slab, not with the OmniBlock, with the slab. When you have a floating toilet on a regular frame structure, they're going to have a big, huge metal bracket system that's going to go inside the concrete, and it's going to be set and cured with the concrete, and it's coming right up into the truss, right into the wall system. You can do it on some wall systems, but it needs to be a 2x6 wall, and it needs to be really beefed up. But the new toilets really handle it well when they're put in with the concrete. You can't do that with OmniBlock unless, well, you really can't do it with OmniBlock. I'd have to check with Denny on that. The only way you could do it is if you had a lot of rebar coming up through the OmniBlock, a ton of rebar, and then you're able to mount it to that wall. But I still don't know how you do that unless you had some not J bolts, but carriage bolts that went right through it all the way, and they were encased in concrete. So I know it could be done. It's a lot of work to figure that out. And that's a lot of time to figure out. I love floating toilets. It's great. It's easy to mop the house, mop the bathroom. The toilets are not sitting on the floor. You don't have to worry about the grout. You don't have to worry about the caulking at the bottom of the toilet. They're great. But I think it'd be very hard with the OmniBlock unless you had an OmniBlock and then you furred out all between the OmniBlock and the bathroom, and you furred that out with 2x6s, and you come up with your plumbing right into the 2x6, and then you have all that bracket system ready to go, and then you mount it to that wall. But you're losing, 4.5 inches, 3.5 inches of wall space. But that's another way you can do that.
Here's another
Okay, Claude Green. I'm in the OmniBlock home. I have all plumbing on interior frame walls except for the kitchen sink that has a 9-foot, 4-inch view window. How will the sink be vented in this case? It will be vented internally. The plumbers will actually have an internal, I forget the name of the vent, but it's a little vent that will actually pull in air, fresh air from inside the home down into the sewer. I've done that. I've done it a lot. Ask your plumber about that and see if he's okay with that. They have them at Standard Plumbing. They have them all over the place. But it'd be an internal vent. I'm sorry, I forget the name of it, but it's about that big, and it goes on top of the vent right inside the kitchen, right on top of the sewer line. Chris Martin, what is a good rule of thumb for estimating the cost of a slab separating out labor and the cost of concrete. Ooh, that's a hard one. I would say that concrete could be roughly 60 to 75% of the cost. Actually, the labor of concrete could be anywhere from 50 to 80 to 85% of the total cost of concrete. Now, I've mentioned sometimes some subcontractors will charge 50% labor and 50% to materials. Some will charge 60%. Some it's 20%. If the material is super cheap, then the labor is going to be cheaper. Insulation is a good example. But concrete, if concrete's cheap, labor is still going to be pretty high, depending upon how complicated the foundation is. If there's a lot of steps in the foundation, it's requiring a lot of forms, a lot of compaction, a lot of footings, a lot of prep work. The more prep work for that concrete guy, the higher his labor is going to go. I just met my concrete guy up here, and we just finished. If you've been watching a YouTube channel, we actually built a foundation under a home. We had to dig 3 feet down. It was pretty brutal. It took us 2 months to do. That's a high cost. But if it's not a remodel, it's just you're going to dig in the ground and dig footings and pour concrete, and it's pretty much all level, no steps, then that's going to be more affordable. It could be closer to 50% of the total cost. So I hope that helps. It's so variable. Every industry is different. SM Build. I heard that GC is the one that will meet with the city inspectors, and subs won't usually be there. However, being an owner builder, is it okay to ask the subs to be present? It's actually good for nobody to be there. Inspectors do not like it when somebody's there because they can't think freely and they get intimidated. And if you've got the wrong personality there, you can fight them, and that can be an adversarial relationship, and you don't need that right away. Nobody needs to be there. You just wait for the inspection report to come to you as an email, and then you'll see what you need to do, or if you passed or if you failed. And if you failed, they'll give you a list of what you need to do. And then you take that report and you email it back to your subcontractor. Electrical passed because GFI was not working, or plumbing passed because it didn't have a headwater test, or whatever it may be. They now have to come back. They tell you when they're ready. You go and call for the inspection again. But nobody needs to be there for an inspector. They don't like it. So, Miriam, which apps or software do you recommend to self-draw a plan? I don't. I would just take some grid paper, and each inch on a grid paper is equal to a foot, and just have some fun with a floor plan. There's a lot of programs out there, but I'd rather use a program that actual architects and engineers use, because they have to transpose it anyway. So why not just keep it simple for you and simple for them, and draw your floor plan on some grid paper? I've had a lot of clients do that.
And you can walk through model homes and get ideas.
Walk through model homes, get some ideas.
There's even plan books.
Plan books, look at those, and you
start
start with your floor plan first. You don't start with the exterior. I've had every owner builder that tried to build a home because they like the exterior and they went really crazy with the exterior, ended up not building the home. You start with the interior floor plan that works for you, and then you make the exterior fit that floor plan. And I could go on and talk about nightmare stories about that. So I had a couple that really neat people. They were going to build up north. They ended up not building. That plan was too complicated, and they ended up selling the land and not building. And then they contacted me about 3 weeks ago. Says, Keith, you were our GC consultant a while ago. We'd like to start back up again. We think we got our head on our shoulders this time. I was like, oh, okay, if we do it again? I go, yeah. I gave them access to the program. And I says, if you need 1 or 2 consults, I'll be happy to help you out, because I want them to be successful. But again, we get too complicated in our design. A couple more minutes, a couple more questions. Alex Alvarez, where do you get a floor and truss plan that is not pre-manufactured if you want to hand build your roof and floor trusses? Your engineer, your structural engineer is going to tell you how and what needs to be built, and then you just follow those engineered plans. That's what you have to do. And that's going to be complicated. That's going to be a lot of time, a lot of labor to do that. And you may want to ask yourself, do I really want to do that? And you want to ask, as if you're a good carpenter and you can cut on a square, and you cut flush and it's plumb, and by all power, do that. But just if it's a complicated truss system, even a floor truss system, you don't want to watch out for that. But the engineer is going to design it, and then you will follow what the engineer says, typically. Okay. Bradley James, how long does it typically take you to create your budget now compared to how long it took you when you first started? When I first started, it took me forever because I didn't have the relationships with subcontractors. If I was an owner builder, I went back in time. The first home I did, I think I got the budget done in about a month and a half. Right now, I can get a budget done in about 3 weeks. If it's really busy, like it was 2 years ago, it would take me a month and a half to get people to give me some numbers. Now numbers are coming in faster. So I can typically get the budget done in about 3 to 4 weeks tops. That's if I'm thinking ahead. Now, the key is in my program at How to Build Your Own Home, I have a working budget for you. It's a really great budget because it details all the costs that you'd most likely have.
He has it. Read the next.
Okay. I'm creating mine from the first time using your master budget Excel sheet, and is beyond helpful. It is just taking quite long to find reputable companies to work with and get answers in a timely manner. So it has been a pretty long process. I can only assume that process gets easier and quicker each time you do it. Yes, just the first page of that is the hardest one. Once you get that, your excavation, your concrete foundation, and your framing lumber, and then all the subs, electrical, mechanical, etc., like that, the main ones like that. That first page is the hard part. The second page is a lot of finish and paint and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just go through that budget, and what you do is you just stare at it every morning. Oh, I didn't call that person. Let me call that. Oh, I forgot a chimney cap. I need to get a chimney cap. So that budget actually reminds you of what you're forgetting. My daughter just got mad at me. This is an interesting story. I was working off at QuickBooks, and I did a full bid on QuickBooks, and we submitted it. The client approved it, but I didn't remember installation. And she says, from now on, you are going to follow our budget to a T every single time. You're not going to just write up an estimate inside QuickBooks. You are going to use our budget. And I go, I'm sorry. Luckily, I had padding and contingency to make it work. But that's how good that budget is. It actually reminds you of every area that you need to make sure you're covered in costs. Okay. Last question. We'll end it with this last question. There we go. I am creating. There we are. One more.
Sorry, I got moved.
Okay, one more. Ever O. I like that. Enver O. Hi, Keith. We went to a few local banks to get construction loan. The banks will only lend to a GC, or if we have a GC. Do you recommend we get a GC license, personal or LLC license? You're going to need a general contractor license, not an LLC license. And then go back to the bank. If you're in my program, there's a letter in the download section. You can take that to the bank. It's worked in some situations. It hasn't worked in others. But there's a letter that is designed for lenders and say, hey, I'm in a program. It's called How to Build Your Own Home. It helps me, it guides me. And it's phenomenal, and I have a resource. If they don't go for that, ask to see if they will go for a GC consultant, but that GC is not a licensed GC in your state. What they're going after is somebody who's going to carry liability for the work product. And that's why they want a general contractor license. If that's the case, ask them, is it okay if we get insured? Or if I promise not to do anything on the job, but it's all subcontracted out, and all my subcontractors have a license. You have to kind of negotiate. If you talk with a bank and find out exactly what is their Achilles heel, where is the weak point, what do they really want protection for? And so it's typically for liability, and that's the only reason why they want a general contractor, because we carry very expensive insurance. My insurance is like $1,200 a month. So they want that kind of coverage. They want that over the entire build. If that's the case, ask them, hey, can I get insurance? In my download section for architects, engineers, etc., I have a contact to an insurance agent who services across the country, and he specializes in construction lending or construction insurance. whole umbrella coverage stuff. He's really good at it. So you can talk with him too. But it's just a talking with the banks. Right now, banks want to lend. To be honest with you, banks are now having a real hard time because they're not making money. They're not making money because there's nobody out there asking for money. So negotiate with them. See if you can work something out. So, and take that letter to them. It explains the program. It's in the download section of the self-managed package. So
There's one more.
one more question. My wife says, take one more. John White, do you use 5/8 or 1/2-inch drywall, walls or ceilings, both? You're going to need 1/2-inch in the garage because that's a fire rated wall for the most part. And if you wanted the expensive drywall throughout the house, you can do that. However, most people just use 5/8 throughout the rest of the home. You don't need to have the expensive drywall. But inside that garage, the ceiling and the walls inside the garage, it's going to be a fire rated drywall, and it's going to be a thicker drywall. So, okay. Anything else? I think. Oh. Okay, one more. My wife says one.
It's not a question. It's from us.
Right now we have a First Steps course. Yes, we have a First Steps course, 30% discount for this week. Use Build 30 off to get the discount. So it's Build 30 off.
And then there's a discount after that one for the self-managed.
And then there's a discount when you finish that course. There's a discount at the very end. It's the last course, the last module in the course that will give you a discount on the self-managed course. I'm surprised people don't see that. It's right there in the last course and they forget it. And there's a discount code. I think it gives you 10% off, something like that. So use those coupon codes. Again, Build 30 off to get the discount. It's all one word, Build 30 off.
Next Friday. So it's a week from today.
It'll be good for until a week for today.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a week for today. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's all we have. Thanks everyone for being here. Sorry I was late, and I'm going to go up and take a shower because I'm stinking up the place. So you guys take care, and we'll see you guys next Thursday.